New York City, 1976. The city was on the brink of bankruptcy. The heat was record-breaking, and the blackout of '77 was just around the corner. In the middle of this chaos, a shadow began stalking the outer boroughs. It started in the Bronx and Queens. Young couples sitting in parked cars were suddenly approached by a man with a massive .44 caliber bulldog revolver. He didn't rob them. He didn't speak. He just fired and vanished into the night. For months, the police had no leads and no motive. They called him the .44 caliber killer. The randomness of the attacks meant that anyone, anywhere could be the next target. Long hair became a liability, as the killer seemed to favor women with dark, flowing locks, leading thousands of New Yorkers to cut and dye their hair in a desperate attempt to stay off his radar. The mystery took a dark, theatrical turn when the killer began leaving letters of crime scenes and mailing them to legendary columnist Jimmy Breslin. In these scrawled notes, he gave himself a name that would haunt the city's history: the Son of Sam. He claimed he was a behemoth and a monster, mocking the police for their inability to catch him. He spoke of Father Sam and hinted at a dark subterranean world of demons. The media frenzy was unprecedented. Every headline fueled his ego, and for the first time in criminal history, a serial killer was actively using the press to craft his own terrifying mythology. The city wasn't just afraid of a man anymore, they were afraid of a legend. When David Berkowitz was finally apprehended in August 1977, the reality was far stranger than the fiction. He wasn't a sophisticated mastermind. He was a lonely, disenfranchised postal worker living in a cramped apartment in Yonkers. During his initial confession, he dropped a bombshell that defined the satanic panic era. He claimed that his neighbor, Sam Carr, owned a black Labrador retriever that was possessed by an ancient demon. Berkowitz told police that Harvey would bark at him in the middle of the night, giving him telepathic commands to go out and kill. He believed he was an obedient son carrying out the bloody will of a demonic entity. Whether it was a genuine psychotic break or a calculated attempt to appear insane, the demon dog theory became the centerpiece of the most bizarre interrogation in NYPD history. Despite the occult letters and the supernatural claims, the Son of Sam wasn't caught by a psychic or a profiler. He was caught by a parking ticket. On the night of his final murder in Brooklyn, a local woman noticed a man getting into a cream-colored Ford Galaxy that was parked near a fire hydrant. She saw a police officer putting a ticket on the car. Detectives searched the records for every ticket issued in that area that night. One name stood out: David Berkowitz of Yonkers. When police arrived at his car, they saw a rifle and a duffel bag in the back seat. As Berkowitz walked to the vehicle, he saw the detectives, smiled, and famously said, "Well, you got me. How come it took you so long?" He was sentenced to 365 years in prison, where he remains today. A man who proved that while a killer can create a monster's legend, it's often the most mundane paper trail that brings them down. In the working-class suburbs of Adelaide, Australia, in the early '90s, John Bunting was a man with a mission. He was charismatic, protective, and vocal. He convinced his neighbors that the local government and police were failing to protect them from social deviance. Bunting set himself up as a self-appointed judge. He began holding meetings where he and a small circle of followers would discuss who in their community was unworthy. What started as neighborhood watch gossip turned into something far more sinister. Bunting wasn't just talking, he was recruiting. He found vulnerable, angry men and convinced them that killing wasn't just a choice, it was a civic duty. For years, people in the neighborhood began to vanish, and the local communities simply thought they had moved away to escape Bunting's intense gaze. The mystery broke wide open in May 1999. Police were investigating the disappearance of several people when their search led them to the tiny, nearly abandoned town of Snowtown, about 90 miles north of Adelaide. They focused on an old, disused bank building that had been rented out recently. When officers broke the seal on the bank's heavy steel vault, the smell was the first thing that hit them. Inside were 6 large plastic vats. They weren't filled with money or records. They were filled with acid and the remains of 8 people. As the investigation expanded, they found more victims buried in backyards and under floorboards. The vigilante hadn't been protecting the neighborhood. He had been harvesting it. How did Bunting keep the murders a secret for nearly a decade? He was a master of social engineering. After killing a victim, the group would steal their identity. They would use the victim's bank cards to withdraw welfare checks and even record the victim's voices on cassette tapes, forcing them to say they were moving away before they were killed. The group lived off these stolen checks, creating a digital ghost of each victim that continued to move money and talk to relatives through letters and recorded messages. This allowed Bunting to maintain the illusion that the people he had murdered were still alive and well in other parts of Australia. It was a cold, calculated system of profit that turned human lives into a recurring revenue stream. The trial was one of the longest and most expensive in Australian history. John Bunting and his lead accomplice, Robert Wagner, showed no remorse. Bunting was revealed to be a classic sociopath, someone who took joy in the suffering of others and used moral superiority as a mask for his own bloodlust. Bunting was sentenced to 11 consecutive terms of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The Snowtown Bank has since been demolished, but the name of the town remains synonymous with the darkness that can brew in the shadows of a quiet community. It serves as a chilling reminder that the most dangerous people are often the ones who claim to be protecting you from the monsters outside your door. Nantes, France, April 2011. To his neighbors, Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès was the embodiment of old-world French nobility. He was a devoted father, a charismatic businessman, and a man who took pride in his family's prestigious lineage. But behind the closed doors of their suburban townhouse, the aristocratic dream was collapsing. Xavier was drowning in debt. His business ventures were failing, and the shame of losing his status was more than his ego could bear. But instead of seeking help, Xavier began to prepare. He inherited his father's .22 caliber rifle, bought a silencer, and started making frequent trips to a local shooting range. He told his children's school that the family was moving to Australia for a secret government job. He told his neighbors they were relocating to the United States. He was carefully erasing his life, one lie at a time. By mid-April, the house on Boulevard Schumann went completely dark. The shutters were closed, and a note was left on the door stating the family had left. When police finally entered the home after concerned relatives raised the alarm, they found a house that looked suspended in time. The beds were made, the dishes were put away, but the family was gone. It wasn't until investigators looked under the back porch that the horror was revealed. Buried in the dirt were 5 bodies: Xavier's wife, Agnes, and their 4 children, aged 13 to 20, along with the family's 2 Labradors. Each had been shot in their sleep with clinical precision. But there was one person missing from the graves: Xavier himself. He had vanished, and he had a 10-day head start. The manhunt for Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès became a national obsession in France. Using credit card records and CCTV, police traced his movements across the country. He wasn't hiding in the shadows, he was traveling in plain sight. He stayed at luxury hotels, ate at quiet bistros, and eventually drove his car south toward the Mediterranean coast. The last known footage of Xavier is from April 15, 2011, in the town of Roquebrune-sur-Argonne. He was captured on a security camera walking out of a budget hotel, carrying a long bag that likely held his rifle. He walked toward the rugged, cavernous mountains of the Var region. His car was found abandoned nearby. And then, nothing. No body was ever found, no suicide note, no sightings. It was as if he had walked into the mountain and dissolved into the air. Did Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès take his own life in the wilderness, or did he successfully start a new life in another country? Over the last decade, there have been over 1,000 reported sightings of him across the globe, from South America to Thailand. In 2019, a man was even arrested at a Glasgow airport after a fingerprint match suggested he was Xavier, only for DNA to prove it was a massive mistake. Xavier has become France's version of D.B. Cooper, a ghost who represents the ultimate terrifying possibility that a man can destroy everything he loves and simply walk away. He remains on the Interpol Most Wanted list, a reminder that the most polished masks often hide the deepest darkness, and that sometimes the most dangerous place to be is inside a perfect family.